Hi, I'm Mina.
And I'm Yules.
Thanks for tuning in to Artificially Informed.
Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're here to really cut through the noise today.
Yeah, there's a lot happening.
There really is. Our goal, as always, is to give you that deep analysis, connecting the dots on these big, complex stories. Science, tech, geopolitics, the works.
And today's landscape is, well, it's quite something. We've got these incredible breakthroughs, like finding DNA that's 200,000 years old.
Amazing.
Right alongside, major global friction, a U.S. government shutdown, tense talks over Gaza, and new trade tariffs popping up. It's a real mix.
So we're going to try and unpack it all, give you the context, not just the headlines. You ready to dive in?
Let's do it. Where are we starting?
Okay, let's start with the fundamentals.
Yeah.
Section 1, the quantum realm and deep time discoveries. Science and archaeology first.
Right. And first up is a really significant update in biomedicine. It's about addiction, specifically alcohol dependency. New research seems to have pinpointed a key brain mechanism.
Okay, I saw this. They're looking at a specific, very small brain circuit, the paraventricular nucleus of the thalamus, PVT, they call it.
That's the one, the PVT. And what's really interesting is why it's so important in addiction. This circuit is basically the command center for stress and anxiety in the brain.
Okay.
And researchers found it goes into overdrive, becomes massively hyperactive during alcohol withdrawal. It's essentially screaming, chemically speaking.
So that changes how we think about addiction, doesn't it?
Yeah.
We often hear about chasing the high, the pleasure part.
Exactly. That's been the dominant idea for a long time. But this PVT finding, it flips the script. It suggests the cycle isn't primarily driven by seeking pleasure.
It's about stopping the pain.
Precisely. It's about escaping the pain of withdrawal, that intense stress, the anxiety. Alcohol, in this view, becomes a way to just quiet down that hyperactive PVT circuit, sort of a maladaptive coping mechanism.
That feels huge for treatment. If the main driver is pain avoidance, not reward seeking, then maybe some current approaches are missing the mark.
That's the implication, yeah. It could open up completely new ways to develop treatments. Instead of just focusing on, say, dopamine pathways related to reward, you could target the neurochemistry that regulates the PVT stress response.
Like maybe drugs that boost GABA, the brain's main calm down signal.
Exactly like that. Something to calm that overactive PVT during withdrawal could theoretically break the cycle. It gives a physical target, moving beyond just behavioral therapy.
A really profound shift. Okay, let's pivot.
Yeah.
From the brain's complexity to, well, the complexity inside a tumor, there's an amazing finding about bacteria fighting cancer.
Yes, this is fascinating. Researchers discovered that certain bacteria actually living inside colorectal tumors produce a molecule that messes with the cancer cells themselves.
Wow. And this molecule is 2-methyl-isocitrate,
Yeah.
or 2-mesetin. How does a bacterial byproduct actually fight cancer?
It seems to work on a couple of levels. First, it interferes with the cancer cell's metabolism. You know how cancer cells have that rapid, often chaotic energy production?
Right, they burn through fuel.
Well, 2-meset seems to disrupt that. It might interfere with the Krebs cycle, the cell's core energy engine. It basically destabilizes the cell by messing with its energy supply.
Like throwing sand in the gears.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
But there's more. The sources also suggest 2-meset damages the cancer cell's DNA integrity.
Okay, so weakened metabolism and damaged DNA.
Exactly. And when the cell is weakened like that, it becomes much more vulnerable to standard chemotherapy. So the bacteria, through this molecule, are effectively priming the tumor, making chemo work better.
So you could potentially use less chemo or target-resistant tumors by using the tumor's own bacteria against it.
That's the hope. It's a really revolutionary idea, recruiting the tumor's microbiome. Absolutely staggering.
Okay, shifting gears again, but still on life. Let's look at the big picture. Longevity. Why do females often outlive males across the animal kingdom?
There's been a huge analysis looking at thousands of zoo animals, and it points pretty strongly to evolutionary pressions.
Dating competition, right.
That seems to be the main driver, yeah. In species where males compete really intensely for mates, fighting, defending territory, risky displays, they basically live fast and die younger.
Constant high-stakes behavior.
Absolutely. All that aggression, the physical risks, the sheer energy spent on just trying to reproduce, it takes a toll physiologically. Higher stress, higher mortality.
Whereas females?
Females generally invest more in parental care, nurturing offspring, less energy spent on risky competition, more on sort of bodily maintenance and survival. It seems to lead to better health outcomes, longer lives. It's that classic evolutionary trade-off.
Energy for fighting versus energy for upkeep. Makes sense.
Okay, that leads us nicely into deep time. Ancient DNA, section 1.2, that horse DNA discovery.
Oh, this is a big one in paleogenomics. They retrieved DNA from an extinct horse Equus genus that's 200,000 years old from the Schöningen site in Germany.
200,000. But wait, isn't ancient DNA incredibly fragile? Usually you need permafrost or a deep cave, right? Oxygen, light, microbes just destroy it otherwise. That's exactly why this is so unprecedented. Schöningen is an open-air site. No permafrost, no deep cave protection.
So how did it survive?
That's the million-dollar question. The thinking is that the specific local conditions, maybe the soil's mineral content, or how quickly it got buried by certain sediments, must have created a kind of microenvironment that protected the DNA extraordinarily well. It really pushes the boundaries of how long these biomolecules can actually last.
A victory over decay itself. Okay, it's scientifically cool, but why should we care about the genetics of an Ice Age horse today?
It's actually really relevant for modern conservation. Sequencing that ancient genome gives us clues about how that horse population handled things back then, genetic bottlenecks adapting to climate change during the Pleistocene.
Ah, like a genetic roadmap of survival.
Exactly. We can see what genetic traits help them pull through past crises. And that information is gold for conservationists today, trying to save endangered large animals like rhinos or Przewalski's horses. Well, knowing the historical genetic diversity, maybe identifying ancient immune genes or adaptations, that helps inform captive breeding programs now. You can try to breed for resilience, maximize the genetic health needed to face our rapidly changing world. It's a direct link from the deep past to present-day action.
That's a fantastic application.
Yeah.
And speaking of applying advanced tech to history, there's this other story, using AI for historical justice, identifying a Nazi officer.
Yes, really powerful work. It involves historian Jürgen Matthias and the investigative group Bellingcat. They used advanced artificial intelligence, AI techniques on that horrifying 1941 photo from Berdichev in Ukraine.
The one known as the last Jew in Vinnytsia. It's unforgettable, truly haunting.
Yeah.
How did AI help identify the man in the photo?
Well, traditional methods hit a wall with old grainy photos, but these AI algorithms can analyze really subtle facial features, geometry, ear shape, jawline things the human eye might miss or that are obscured by poor quality.
And compare him to records.
Right. They match these features against SS personnel records and other archival photos. It overcame the image degradation and definitively linked the gunman to a specific name, Jacobus Onen. It brings a measure of accountability, or at least identification, where there was ambiguity before.
A chilling but incredibly important use of that technology.
Yeah.
Okay, let's wrap this section by looking up. Section 1.3, Cosmic Perspectives. We've got a supermoon coming.
We do. October 7th. Mark your calendars. It's the harvest moon, and it'll be the first supermoon of 2025.
Supermoon meaning full moon happens at the same time the moon is closest to Earth in its orbit. Perigee.
Exactly. So it looks a bit bigger, noticeably brighter than usual. Always a nice sight if the clouds cooperate.
Definitely. And while we're thinking about Earth and moon moving, let's tackle that classic question. Why can't we feel the Earth spinning, orbiting? It's moving incredibly fast, right?
Yeah, about 1,000 miles per hour rotation at the equator, and orbiting the sun at something like 67,000 miles per hour. It comes down to inertia in your frame of reference.
Yeah.
Meaning we and the atmosphere and everything on the surface are all moving together at a constant velocity. There's no sudden acceleration or deceleration relative to the ground we're standing on. It's like being in a smoothly flying airplane. You don't feel the speed itself, only changes in speed or turbulence.
So because the speed is constant and we're moving with the system, we don't perceive the motion.
Precisely. Our bodies are completely integrated into Earth's gravitational and inertial system. If Earth suddenly slammed on the brakes, oh, we'd feel it. But its motion is incredibly uniform.
Right. Okay, that smooth cosmic motion makes the next topic feel even more frantic. The AI economy.
Yeah, the pace there is anything but smooth and constant. Let's get into section 2, the AI economy, tech risks, and global markets.
The designer Joni Ive called the pace extraordinary. You really see that in the race for AI infrastructure, section 2.1, starting with OpenAI, big upgrades.
Huge upgrades. They've revamped their API, that's the application programming interface developers use, includes the release of GPT-5, which they say has much better reasoning skills, and importantly, a new model called A4 Mini.
Why is A4 Mini significant?
Because it brings advanced capabilities, understanding both text and images, to the free users of ChatGPT. That's a massive expansion of access. But it also needs incredible amounts of computing power.
Which leads us straight to the AMD deal, advanced micro devices.
Yep. AMD landed a multi-year deal to supply OpenAI with potentially huge volumes of AI chips, and the market reaction was explosive.
Their stock jumped over 34% in one day. That's enormous.
Biggest single-day gain in nearly a decade for them, added something like $80 billion to their market value. It's a massive vote of confidence in AMD as a serious competitor to NVIDIA in the AI chip space.
But there's a detail here that feels really crucial, beyond just a sales contract. OpenAI gets an option to buy up to 10% of AMD.
That's the kicker. This isn't just a customer-supplier thing anymore. It's deep strategic alignment. Even though OpenAI is reportedly burning through cash like crazy.
$2.5 billion, the report said.
Something like that. But having the option for a 10% stake gives them immense leverage. They can potentially influence AMD's roadmap, make sure chip development perfectly suits their future needs for even bigger AI models. It's creating this really tightly integrated ecosystem.
A major power play in the hardware race.
Mm-mm.
Okay, but with all this speed comes risk. Section 2.2, the pitfalls of automation. That Deloitte story in Australia is, wow.
Yeah, a real cautionary tale. Deloitte had to refund the Australian government, I think it was over $440,000, because an AI-generated report they delivered was just full of mistakes. Rife with inaccuracies, was the quote.
And the problem was hallucinations, right? We need to be clear what that means.
Right. AI hallucinations aren't like human ones. It's when the AI generates stuff that sounds perfectly plausible, grammatically correct, totally confident, but it's just wrong, made up.
Like what?
In this case, fabricated citations, fake quotes, data points that didn't exist. It likely happens when the AI doesn't have enough good, verified data on a specific topic and starts, essentially, making logical-sounding guesses based on its general training.
Confidently incorrect and expensive for the taxpayer.
Exactly. It screams for the need for human-in-the-loop oversight. You can't just trust the output implicitly, especially for critical reports.
Definitely not. Okay, moving from faulty output to privacy concerns. French prosecutors are investigating Apple over Siri.
Yes, a criminal investigation. The core allegation is that Siri recorded and analyzed user conversations without getting proper consent. This stems largely from a whistleblower, Thomas Leboniek, who used to work for an Apple contractor.
What did he claim you heard?
He said back in 2019, while doing quality control, he reviewed thousands of Siri recordings. And some of them were incredibly private, intimate conversations, confidential business discussions, medical information, things people clearly thought were not being recorded or reviewed.
Oof. Apple says they've changed practices since then, right? More privacy controls.
They have, yes. Enhanced encryption, clearer opt-ins. But this investigation, especially under Europe's strict GDPR privacy laws, the General Data Protection Regulation, it really highlights that ongoing tension. How do you improve voice assistants, which need data, without violating user trust and privacy rights?
A tough balance. That investigation could have big implications. Okay, let's round out this section with Section 2.3, economic stress points. Starting in the UK, AstraZeneca's warning.
Yeah, this is significant. AstraZeneca, a huge player in UK pharma and biotech, has basically threatened to halt a massive $650 million investment plan. That includes a big $200 million upgrade to a research facility.
Why the threat? What's the issue?
It's about drug pricing. They say the UK government system for evaluating the cost-effectiveness of new medicines is outdated. Specifically, the models used by NICELAC, the National Institute for Health and Care Excellence, haven't really changed in like 25 years.
And AstraZeneca argues this undervalues new, innovative drugs.
That's their claim. They say this rigid system makes the UK a less attractive place to invest in cutting-edge research compared to, say, the EU or the US, where evaluation models might be different. It's a major warning shot about the UK's R&D environment.
A serious challenge to their life sciences ambitions. Meanwhile, shifting to cars. The rise of Chinese EVs is just staggering. BYD in the UK.
Astonishing growth. BYD's sales in the UK market shot up by 880%. 880%.
Wow.
It's made the UK their biggest market outside of China itself.
What does that tell us about the bigger picture?
It just underscores the sheer scale and speed of the Chinese EV industry. They can produce efficiently, offer competitive prices, and have the models ready to meet demand in markets like the UK that are pushing EV adoption. Legacy automakers are really scrambling to keep up. It's a rapid global shift.
No kidding. And one last stress point, closer to home. A major bank flagging a specific U.S. southern city for real estate bubble risk.
Yes. They didn't name the city in the source we saw, but the warning is stark. This particular city apparently has the world's highest risk of a real estate bubble right now.
Higher than my.
When? The metrics they're looking at, things like the ratio of house prices to income, the amount of investor-owned property, these are reportedly higher now than they were just before the big housing crash back in 2006.
Higher than 2006 levels. That's alarming.
It is. The combination of high demand, significant investor activity, and very tight supply is creating a serious affordability crisis and potentially a major financial vulnerability if interest rates rise further or the economy cools. A critical warning sign.
Absolutely. Okay, let's take a breath. We need to deliberately shift now into the toughest territory. Geopolitics, tariffs, and domestic upheaval. Section 3. And just to be clear for everyone listening, we're approaching this strictly impartially, reporting the facts as presented in our sources.
Absolutely. Balance is key here. We start with the Israel-Gaza conflict, Section 3.1. It's the second anniversary of the October 7th attacks by Hamas.
A deeply somber time. Commemorations are being held in Israel for the 1,200 people killed, and the pain is ongoing, especially for the families of hostages still held.
Yes, the sources mention Harut Nimrodi, whose son Tamir is still captive. That uncertainty, 2 years later, it just highlights the immense human cost that continues.
Amidst all this, there are diplomatic efforts. Peace talks started in Egypt.
First day of negotiations, yes, mediated by various international partners. Reports describe the initial talks as ending on a positive note, which sounds maybe hopeful, but it's incredibly fragile. They're likely exploring options for a ceasefire, maybe prisoner exchanges.
But the pressure from the U.S. is intense. President Trump's warning to Hamas.
Very strong language, warning Hamas of massive bloodshed if they don't agree to the proposed peace framework. This comes alongside the fact, also reported, that the U.S. has provided Israel with $21.7 billion in military aid over these past 2 years.
So it's a two-pronged approach.
Yeah.
Huge military support for Israel, coupled with very forceful diplomatic pressure on Hamas.
Exactly. It really shows the complex and some would say contradictory role the U.S. is playing. Meanwhile, international reactions remain strong. The Gaza aid flotilla incident.
Right, where French MEP Rima Hassan and activist Greta Thunberg were detained and deported by Israel after trying to breach the blockade.
And Hassan specifically alleged being assaulted by Israeli police during that interception. That caused quite a stir politically in Europe.
And the condemnation goes high up, the Vatican's top diplomat.
Cardinal Pietro Parolin, the Vatican Secretary of State, he used very strong language, calling the situation in Gaza an ongoing massacre. It highlights the scale of the humanitarian crisis and the widespread suffering among Palestinians from the conflict and blockade.
It's just an incredibly complex and tragic situation with pressure coming from all sides. Okay, let's shift focus now to the U.S., Section 3.2, Executive Power and Political Division, the government shutdown.
Entering its 7th day now, the Senate rejected spending plans again. It seems to be the usual D.C. deadlock-deep partisan divides, arguments over policy riders attached to the essential funding bills.
And it's having real-world consequences. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy is worried about air traffic controllers working without pay.
13,000 of them. That's a huge number. Beyond the personal hardship for them, there's a safety concern. Fatigue, stress.
And staffing shortages.
Right. The sources mentioned an unmanned control tower at Hollywood Burbank Airport in California as a direct result. When critical infrastructure isn't staffed because of political fights, that's a direct risk to public safety.
Definitely. At the same time, President Trump is rolling out new tariffs, 25% on imported trucks.
Medium and heavy-duty trucks, yeah. Effective November 1st. The administration frames it as protecting U.S. manufacturers, Peterbilt, Kenworth, companies like that, from unfair competition. Partly a national security argument, too.
But the U.S. Chamber of Commerce disagrees.
Strongly. They point out the top exporters of these trucks are Mexico, Canada, Japan, Germany, Finland. Basically key allies, not security threats. Their worry is this will just raise costs for American businesses that use these trucks, hurt supply chains, and probably lead to retaliatory tariffs from other countries. The classic protectionism versus free trade fight.
And then there's the really contentious issue of using the military domestically. President Trump mentioning the Insurrection Act.
Yes, he signaled openness to invoking it. This is a really big deal, legally. The Insurrection Act dates back to 1807. It lets the president deploy active-duty U.S. military forces inside the country for law enforcement, overriding the usual restrictions of the Posse Comitatus Act.
And this comes after a judge blocked him from unilaterally sending the National Guard to Portland.
Correct. That ruling limited his power regarding the Guard specifically. Invoking the Insurrection Act would be a much broader assertion of federal power for domestic policing.
And related to this, Illinois is suing the president.
Over the planned deployment of National Guard troops to Chicago, the lawsuit challenges the constitutionality of that move, arguing it infringes on state authority over domestic security. It really shows the deep legal and political clashes over the president's power in times of civil unrest.
Okay, turning to foreign policy tensions now. Venezuela. A major policy shift.
Seems so. Reports say President Trump has ordered diplomats to stop all talks, basically ending diplomacy with the Maduro government in Venezuela.
And hinting at military escalation.
The language is definitely more aggressive. Frustration over Maduro staying in power, plus ongoing accusations linking his government to drug cartels. The president suggested potential land strikes inside Venezuela if the current maritime anti-drug operations aren't deemed successful enough.
Land strikes. That's a huge escalation from sanctions.
Absolutely. Moving from economic and diplomatic pressure towards discussing direct military intervention is a dramatic shift.
And Venezuela's response.
They've issued their own warning, claiming there's a false flag plot by extremists to bomb the now-closed U.S. embassy in Caracas, potentially to create a pretext for U.S. intervention. It shows how high the tensions are and the defensive posture in Caracas.
Okay, from the Americas to Europe, Section 3.3, European instability and rule of law. France sounds chaotic.
The political situation there is described as baroque, dramatic. The prime minister resigned. Macron's having trouble forming a stable government. He's facing intense pressure, even talk of impeachment motions.
So, difficulty governing effectively.
Seems like it. Inability to get key laws passed, leadership instability. It points to some deep challenges in the French political system right now, and maybe growing public frustration.
And in the UK, a controversial proposal on justice reform, changing how sentencing works.
Yes. The Conservative Party proposal is to get rid of the Independent Sentencing Council altogether.
And give control to
Government ministers. They would set the sentencing guidelines directly. Supporters say this makes sentencing more accountable to the public, lets ministers reflect public opinion on crime and punishment.
But critics are worried about politicizing the courts.
That's the core concern, yes. Legal experts warn that taking guideline control away from an independent judicial body and giving it to politicians risks making sentences depend on political moods or election cycles rather than consistent legal principles. It could undermine fairness and judicial independence.
A fundamental debate about the separation of powers. Lastly, corporate accountability. Telenor being sued by Myanmar activists.
Yes. Telenor, the Norwegian telecom giant, which is majority owned by the Norwegian state. Civil society groups in Myanmar are suing them.
Over what?
They allege that after the military coup in Myanmar in 2021, Telenor handed over sensitive customer data call records, location data, to the military junta.
And the claim is this data was used to target activists.
Exactly. Used to identify, track down, repress, and persecute people opposing the coup. Telenor's defense is essentially that they were forced to comply by the regime under threat, but the activists argue the company had an overriding ethical duty to protect its users' data, especially in that dangerous environment.
A huge ethical dilemma for companies in authoritarian states.
Yeah.
Raises fundamental questions. Okay, we've navigated some very turbulent waters there. Let's move to our final section, planetary health, weather, and international commerce.
Right. Section 4, and let's start Section 4.1, energy transition, with some genuinely good news. A historic milestone.
What's that?
For the first time ever, in the first half of 2025, renewable energy sources generated more electricity globally than coal did.
Wow, really? That's actually huge news for the climate fight. What drove that?
Mostly the absolutely massive, rapid build-out of solar and wind power capacity, especially in Asia. China reportedly invested something like $625 billion in clean energy just in 2024.
So the sheer scale of investment is finally tipping the balance.
It seems so. Even though overall global energy demand is still rising, renewables are growing fast enough now to overtake coal in the electricity mix. A really positive benchmark.
Okay, but progress is complicated. Those trade tariffs we talked about earlier, they're hitting economic growth, especially in South Asia.
Yeah, the World Bank actually lowered its growth forecast for South Asia for 2026, dropped it from 6.4% down to 5.8%. And they directly blame high U.S. tariffs, like that 50% tariff, on many Indian goods.
How does that slow down the whole region?
It just raises costs for manufacturers everywhere who rely on components or materials subject to the tariffs, makes exports less competitive, dampens investment. India is still projected to be the fastest growing major economy, but these tariffs are like a strong headwind, limiting the region's potential.
Politically induced drag on the economy.
Ugh.
Okay, let's turn to Section 4.2, Extreme Weather and Ecological Crises. Some grim reports from the U.S., that North Dakota tornado.
Yes, tragically confirmed as an EF5. That's the highest rating, winds over 200 miles per hour. It was the first EF5 in the U.S. in 12 years. 3 people lost their lives. It ends a long streak without such an extreme event and definitely raises questions about severe weather intensity.
Terrifying. And we also have a new tropical storm forming.
Tropical storm Jerry, out in the Atlantic. Forecasters think it could strengthen into the next hurricane, possibly threatening the Leeward Islands and maybe heading towards Florida later. Hurricane season is definitely active.
And it's not just storms. High mountains remain dangerous. That snowstorm on Mount Everest
happened during China's National Holiday Week, so there were apparently hundreds of hikers on the mountain. The severe snowstorm trapped many of them.
Rescue efforts were difficult.
Yeah, hampered by blizzard conditions. Reports mention hikers with severe hypothermia, altitude sickness. It's just a stark reminder of the risks up there, especially when large numbers of people might be trekking during peak holiday times.
Definitely. Okay, shifting to ecological crises. South Africa's vulture problem. Mass poisonings.
It's really bad. An ecological disaster, frankly. Vultures play such a critical role. They're nature's cleanup crew, disposing of carcasses, preventing disease spread. Their economic value just for public health in the southern African region is estimated at around $1.8 billion a year.
So why are they being poisoned? Is it deliberate?
Often, yes. Sometimes it's retaliatory farmers poisoning carcasses to kill predators that attack livestock, and the vultures die when they feed on those carcasses. Other times, tragically, they're killed intentionally for use in some traditional medicine practices. Conservation groups are fighting an uphill battle against both. Losing vultures has huge knock-on effects for the ecosystem and public health.
That's really worrying. But let's end on a positive ecological note.
Yeah?
Conservation success in the UK.
Yes. A genuine win. They've successfully reintroduced pine martens to Exmoor National Park. They brought them down from Scotland.
Pine martens, they're like small weasels.
Yeah.
How do they help the ecosystem there?
They're very effective predators, and one of their main prey animals is the gray squirrel.
Ah, the invasive gray squirrel that outcompetes the native red squirrels and damages trees.
Exactly. By reintroducing pine martens, a natural predator, it helps control the gray squirrel population. This promotes the recovery of red squirrels and leads to healthier woodlands overall. It's a great example of targeted conservation really making a difference.
Restoring natural balance. That's fantastic.
So yeah, we have covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? From deep inside the brain with that PVT circuit to the massive financial shifts like AMD's stock surge and the really delicate high-stakes situation with peace talks and political divisions.
It really is a synthesis of breakthrough and, well, volatility. Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, let's pull back to that cosmic view we touched on earlier. Relative motion, why we don't feel the Earth hurtling through space.
Because we're all moving together, part of the same system.
Right, and maybe connect that to the ultraview effect, what astronauts feel seeing Earth from afar. That sense of a single, shared, fragile planet without borders.
That profound perspective shift, seeing the unity.
So here's the final thought we want to leave you with today. If the physics of our planet tells us we're all smoothly integrated, moving together on this one vessel, how should that big picture, ultra-view perspective change how we handle things down here? Well, you know, we share this single, fragile existence. Do these intense, zero-sum political fights like the U.S. shutdown or the deep international conflicts, do they start to seem petty? Or maybe do they become even more urgent to solve because the stakes are, in fact, planetary?
Is our messy political reality a failure to grasp the physics or just a failure of perspective?
Something to think about.
Definitely something to chew on. Thanks, everyone, for joining us on this deep dive.
For enjoying Artificially Informed.
Hit subscribe and share it with a friend.
From the left, the right, and straight from the algorithm.
Thank you.
That's it for today's Artificially Informed.
Nope. Thanks for spending your time with us.
Yeah.
Stay sharp, stay curious. See you next time.